My grandmother built that studio with her own hands, back when nobody believed a woman could run a photography business and make it last. Hawthorne Portraits, she called it, after her maiden name, and for almost 50 years it sat on the corner of Birch and Main with the same brass bell over the door and the same smell of old paper and developing chemicals that never quite left the walls even after we went digital. When she passed, the studio went to my mother, and when my mother passed 6 years later, it came to me. I was 22, halfway through nursing school in another state, with no idea how to run a business and barely enough time to run my own life. My Aunt Celeste, my mother's younger sister, stepped in without me even asking. She'd worked alongside my grandmother for years, knew the clients, knew the equipment, knew which brides wanted soft lighting and which families wanted the old black and white look my grandmother had been famous for. "You focus on your degree," she told me at the funeral, holding both my hands in hers. "I'll keep the lights on. It's still yours, Piper. I'm just watching it for you." And for a long time, that's exactly what it felt like. She'd call every few months with updates, send me photos of new bookings, tell me funny stories about difficult clients. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? She'd known that studio longer than I'd been alive. I finished school. I got my first nursing job. Life moved fast, the way it does when you're young and exhausted and building something of your own. I didn't think much about the studio beyond the occasional check my aunt mailed me, my share of the profits, she said, though the amounts were never large. Small-town photography isn't exactly a gold mine, I told myself. People don't get portraits done like they used to. Everyone has a phone now. It wasn't until my aunt bought a new car, a genuinely nice one, sleek and clearly expensive, that something in me quietly shifted. And then a few months after that, she mentioned offhand that she was finally redoing her kitchen. Granite counters, new cabinets, the whole thing. I remember sitting in my apartment, doing rough math in my head and coming up with numbers that didn't add up. A struggling small-town studio doesn't pay for granite counters and a new car in the same year. Not unless something else was happening that I didn't know about. I told myself I was being paranoid. She was family. She'd given up years of her own time to keep my grandmother's legacy alive for me. I owed her the benefit of the doubt at the very least. But the feeling didn't go away. It just sat there, quiet and stubborn, waiting. I started asking more questions after that. Nothing accusatory, just curious. How many bookings this month? Any big weddings coming up? She always had an answer, smooth and reasonable, the kind of answer that made me feel silly for wondering in the first place. "Business ebbs and flows, honey," she said once when I asked why the last check had been smaller than usual. "You know how it is, slow season." I did know how it was, or at least I thought I did. I'd grown up around that studio, spent summers there as a kid, sorting through boxes of old prints while my grandmother worked. I knew the rhythm of it. Winters were slow, yes, but not that slow. The real crack came when I visited home for a long weekend and stopped by the studio unannounced. I wanted to surprise her, maybe help out for an afternoon, get my hands back into the work I'd loved as a kid. When I walked in, she looked up from the front desk with an expression that lasted only half a second too long before she smiled and stood to hug me. "You should have called," she said. "I'd have tidied up." The studio looked fine to me. Better than fine, actually. New equipment I didn't recognize sat on shelves that used to hold my grandmother's old boxes of negatives and archival prints. I asked about it, and Celeste explained she'd modernized the storage. Moved a lot of the old physical archives into a climate-controlled unit across town, for preservation purposes, she said. It made sense on the surface. Old prints do need proper storage. Still, something about the way she said it, quick and rehearsed, stuck with me the rest of the weekend. I didn't push. I told myself I was overthinking things, the way people do when they've spent too many years being cautious with everyone in their life except the people who are supposed to be safe. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom, I thought about my grandmother's boxes. There had been dozens of them, filled with decades of prints, negatives, contact sheets, some of them from before my mother was even born. My grandmother used to say that box was worth more to her than the building itself. "Family history you can't buy back once it's gone," she'd say. I fell asleep telling myself the boxes were fine, just moved. Just stored somewhere safer. I had no idea how wrong I was. 3 months later, a friend from nursing school invited me to a gallery opening in the city, some new exhibit on mid-century American portraiture. I almost didn't go. I was tired, my shift had run long, and gallery openings had never really been my thing. But she insisted, said the wine was free and the art was supposed to be incredible, and honestly, I think some part of me just wanted a night that had nothing to do with hospitals or studios or family. The gallery was small but elegant, exposed brick walls lined with black and white photographs in simple wooden frames. I wandered through slowly, sipping bad wine, half listening to my friend chat with someone she knew. And then I stopped walking entirely. There, hanging under a small gold placard, was a photograph I recognized instantly. A woman in a wedding dress, laughing, caught mid-turn with her veil lifting in the wind behind her. I knew that photograph because I'd grown up staring at a print of it hanging in my grandmother's hallway. It was one of hers. One of her most famous shots, the one she'd always said put Hawthorne portraits on the map back in the 70s. I read the placard twice before it made sense. Delphine Hawthorne, original silver gelatin print estate collection acquired 2024, acquired from the estate, in 2024. My hands went cold around the wine glass. That print and whatever else was hanging on that wall was supposed to be mine. It was supposed to be sitting in a climate-controlled storage unit, exactly where my aunt told me she'd moved it for safekeeping. A woman in a sharp blazer approached, noticing me staring. Beautiful, isn't it? We were thrilled when this collection became available. Are you familiar with Hawthorne's work? She was my grandmother, I said, my voice barely steady. The woman's face lit up. Oh, how wonderful. I'm Simone Bellamy. I curated this exhibit. We acquired about a dozen original prints from the estate last year through a lovely woman who said she was handling the family's affairs. Celeste, I believe her name was. I don't remember exactly what I said back to her. I remember thanking her, excusing myself, and walking straight outside into the cold night air, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. My aunt had sold my grandmother's original prints that were mine, and she had done it quietly a year ago without a single word to me. I didn't call her that night. I couldn't trust my own voice yet. Instead, I called Simone Bellamy's gallery the next morning, asking as calmly as I could manage for any paperwork related to the acquisition. She was kind about it, more than she needed to be, and emailed me a copy of the sale agreement within the hour. My hands shook as I opened the file. There it was, in black and white. A signed agreement dated 14 months earlier, transferring 12 original prints from the Hawthorne estate to the gallery for a sum that made my stomach turn. Not a small amount. Not something you'd casually forget to mention to the person who legally owned that estate. And at the bottom, a signature, mine, or something meant to look like mine. I stared at it for a long time. I have never in my life signed my name that way. The loop's too careful, too deliberate, like someone practicing rather than someone who'd written their own name 1,000 times without thinking. I forwarded the document to a lawyer friend from nursing school whose husband worked in family law, just to be sure I wasn't imagining things. She called me within a day. Piper, this isn't just a family disagreement, she said gently. This is forgery. If that's not your signature and it sounds like it isn't, this is a serious legal matter. I sat with that for a long while before I finally called my aunt. When she picked up, her voice was warm, ordinary, completely unaware of what I now knew. I saw one of Grandma's prints in a gallery in the city, I said, keeping my voice level. The wedding one. With the veil, there was a pause, a long one, long enough to tell me everything I needed to know before she said a single word. Piper, I can explain, then explain the signature at the bottom of the sale agreement, I said. Because it isn't mine. The silence that followed felt endless. When she finally spoke again, her voice had lost all its warmth, replaced by something smaller, more careful. The business was struggling more than I told you. I didn't want to worry you while you were in school. I thought I could fix it quietly and